Here are the fantasy follows. Top 5 players to add off the waiver wire for week 9 of fantasy football. The top ad is Marvin Jones, wide receiver from the Detroit Lions. Jones currently rostered in 49% of all leagues. Now, with Kenny Galladay's injury in Detroit, Marvin Jones, for the duration of time that Galladay is out, turns into a legit number 1 wide receiver. And even if Galladay's only out for 1 week, that week is against the Minnesota Vikings, currently allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Jones last week versus Indianapolis, 7 targets, 3 catches, 39 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was 18.9 fantasy points last week. This is a legitimate chance to bolster your wide receiver lineup if you need help or if you have to get through bye weeks. Jones, the top player to target on the waiver wire this week. The rest of the top 5. At number 2, it's Damian Harris, running back for the New England Patriots, currently rostered in 47% of all leagues. Last week for Harris, 102 yards, 1 touchdown. That was 16.2 fantasy points against the Bills. He outcarried Rex Burkhead 16-6. So even though sometimes the New England backfield difficult to predict, a more solid workload in that game for Harris. A nice run of games as well. The next 4, the Jets, Baltimore, Houston, then Arizona. The Jets currently allowing the 7th most points to the running back spot. Baltimore at 29, so the 4th fewest, but then Houston 2nd and Arizona 11th. So a nice run in terms of the fantasy points allowed there. At number 3, it's Eric Ebron, tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, currently rostered in 45% of all leagues. Last week against Baltimore, 5 targets, 4 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. That was 14.8 fantasy points. And he continues to have a nice run of games. The next 4 weeks, Dallas, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, and Baltimore. Dallas currently allowing the 9th most fantasy points to the tight end spot. Cincinnati 3rd, Jacksonville 5th, and then back to Baltimore 16th, right in the middle of the pack. So a nice run of Ebron if you are streaming tight ends, or perhaps you need to fill a spot left to injury by George Kittle. Eric Ebron is a nice choice on the waiver wire. At number 4, it's Anthony Miller, wide receiver for the Chicago Bears, currently rostered in 21% of all leagues. A nice game last week for Miller. 11 targets, 8 catches, 73 yards. That was 15.3 fantasy points against the Saints. And he also has a nice run of games the next 4 weeks. Tennessee, Minnesota, then a bye, and then Green Bay. Tennessee currently allowing the 4th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, and Minnesota the 3rd. Green Bay is down at 22. So the next 2 games for sure, nice matchups for Miller. And at number 5, it's DJ Dallas, running back for the Seattle Seahawks, currently rostered in 25% of all leagues. Last week for Dallas, 41 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 5 targets, 5 catches, 17 yards, and a touchdown through the air. That was against the 49ers. You'll want to keep an eye on the backfield injuries in Seattle. If Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde continue to miss time, that means Dallas has great opportunity there. The next 4 games, Buffalo, the Rams, Arizona, Philadelphia. The Bills at 16th, so right in the middle in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. The Rams at 24, so in the bottom half. Arizona 11, Philadelphia 23. So not the top matchups, but a good chance based on injury for continued workload for DJ Dallas. Some bonus names this week to target on the waiver wire, and some sneakier plays here, but sometimes these players help you win these matchups. Starting with Corey Davis, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, currently rostered in 48% of all leagues. Davis has seen a nice workload in the games that he's played this year. In the last 2 weeks, 10 targets each game and a touchdown in each. This last game, it was 128 yards, 8 catches, 26.8 fantasy points against the Bengals. However, a brutal stretch of games coming up. The next 4, Chicago, Indianapolis, Baltimore, and then Indianapolis again. The Bears currently allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. The Colts 18th most, Baltimore at 24, and then the Colts again at 18. So a rough stretch of games, but Davis has produced, so a name worth taking a look at. Allen Lazard, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, currently rostered in 34% of all leagues. This one a little bit sneaky. Lazard, just returning from IR, has not played in several weeks. But in 2 of his 3 games this year, it was 18-plus fantasy points. The run of games there, San Francisco, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Chicago. So not great. The 49ers giving up the 6th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Jacksonville, the 14th most. Indianapolis, 18. And then Chicago, again, the 3rd fewest. But again, Lazard, a player that could be a top player at the wide receiver spot. Worth a look. Nyheim Hines, running back for the Indianapolis Colts, currently rostered in 29% of all leagues. Now, Hines is so game script dependent that keeps him off the top 5 this week, even though he had a great game. 5 targets, 3 catches, 54 yards, 2 touchdowns, 21.2 fantasy points against the Lions. Now, with T.Y. Hilton injured, if he continues to be out of the lineup, perhaps Hines gets more work as a pass catcher. The next 4 games, Baltimore, Tennessee, Green Bay, and then Tennessee again. Baltimore currently allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. Tennessee, the 13th most, and Green Bay, the most. So perhaps you can use Hines as a spot starter. And then another bit of a sneaky player to target here is Jalen Reagor, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, currently rostered in 24% of all leagues. Now, he's been returning from injury. This past game, 6 targets, 3 catches, 16 yards, 1 touchdown. That was 13.2 fantasy points against the Cowboys. He was second on the team in targets to Travis Fulgham. And he's got a bye this week. So that gives him another week to work his way back into the offense. And there's a chance other players will not pick him up off the waiver wire this week. And he could be a top producer for the Eagles, who have been banged up. The run of games after the bye, the Giants, Cleveland, and then Seattle. The Giants currently allowing the 11th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Cleveland, number 2, and Seattle, number 1. So I feel that even if Reagor on a bye this week doesn't help you this week, there's a good chance he could help you moving forward. Worth a look on the waiver wire. Be sure to join us this Sunday and every Sunday for the TFF Live Sunday pregame show, streaming live right here on our YouTube channel. We're on at 12 noon, taking you right up till game time, answering all your fantasy football questions and getting you ready for your matchups each week. And here's where you can find us. We are a brand new channel, so we thank you for watching our videos. If you enjoy our videos, please give us a thumbs up and a share. Click that subscribe button. Make sure you get those notifications for whenever we have new content. And also, we have a goal of 100 new subscribers, so please help us to reach our goal. And please leave your comments below. Let us know if there are other players that you feel should be on these lists. You can check us out on Twitter at @TheFantasyFollow, and that's fantasy spelled FNTSY. And you can send us your fantasy football questions during the week using the hashtag AskTFFLive, and we'll answer those questions live on our Sunday pregame show. On Facebook /TheFantasyFollow and our website, thefantasyfollow.com.